Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Somebody please think of the children!
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest, or guests, will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, we have 2 special guests. Eric Power, director of the animated horror film Attack of the Demons, and Andreas Petersen, writer of the same film. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hello.
Yay.
Yay, we're so glad you guys are here. It's so exciting. I feel like I've been gushing about this movie since the summer, so I'm so excited to get a chance to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, Mary Beth and I both saw it at, it was Cinepocalypse, wasn't it?
Yeah, in Chicago.
Yeah, and it was the first movie that I saw. I was recovering remotely, and it was the first movie I saw for the fest, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a great fest, because I really dug it. It was so unique, and I love the animation style, but we'll kind of get into that. But for our listeners who haven't had a chance to see your film at a festival, can you kind of tell us what Attack of the Demons is all about?
Sure, you want me to take this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Attack of the Demons basically follows 3 friends who live in this small kind of Colorado town, very isolated, who have to deal with basically a demon apocalypse in the making when all hell breaks loose at their Halloween festival. So that's a synopsis, I guess. Quick one.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you both always been horror fans?
Totally. I mean, I guess when I was very, very little, maybe I wasn't thinking about it, but as we'll talk about later in the podcast, I definitely became a horror fan pretty early on.
Cool. What about you, Andreas?
I definitely, it was like one of my earliest memories ever is being like 2 and watching the 33 King Kong.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just like crying because of how sad I was that he fell off the building. I mean, it's just always kind of been there, and it just like tracing it back is just, it was always something that was around when, like, growing up. Like, my mom really loves horror movies,
cool.
And so it was always like the kind of thing where, like, and my parents are both Danish and have no conception of like what is appropriate for a child to watch. And so my mom was always just like, oh, I'm watching one of my favorite movies, it's Silence of the Lambs, do you want to watch it with me? And I was like, I'm 8, this is totally appropriate. But so yeah, it's just always been there, I would say.
That's so funny because I feel like most of the people that we've talked to, their parents have been so protective, and it's always been so sneaky to watch horror. And it's so funny to hear like, oh yeah, my parents were just like, go for it.
Oh yeah, it was like not even like they were nurturing me; they just like didn't know that they were fostering that. Like literally, like I remember the 3 movies growing up that I watched probably before I was 10 with my mom was The Exorcist, The Shining, and Silence of the Lambs. So
wow, and those are like heavy films, not just like like a slasher or something.
Wow.
Those are films I feel like that are kind of scary, but then I feel like if you don't know what's happening, it's not as scary in a way.
Right.
You feel like how do you even know what's going on in like most of those movies at that age?
I mean, well, unlike Terry, I thought The Exorcist was horrifying.
Haha.
I know.
For those of you who didn't listen to last episode, Terry said he didn't like The Exorcist.
It's gonna be a recurring theme.
Because he's wrong.
I know.
So how did the two of you become collaborators and when?
Well, it's a bit of a story. I had made my first feature film, Path of Blood, which is a crazy animated samurai film.
Oh, I really want to watch it. I'm gonna. It's so the trailer I watched looks so good.
Oh, thank you. I'll have to send you a screener. But
okay.
So actually, on Adi Shankar, if you know who that is, he's a producer in Hollywood. He saw the film and sent me an email saying that he loved it and that he knew of this writer that I guess he was reading Andreas' stuff on Blacklist, and he had a script for a horror film that Andreas wrote, and he sent that to me, and I thought it was awesome. And so nothing really came of that script, but Andreas like reached out to me on Twitter being like, hey, I watched Path of Blood, and I'm like, hey, I read your film, and we became friends, and then just sort of started talking about making films together. And Attack of the Demons was one of the ideas that I sort of pitched because I had sort of like a loose idea for a story. And I was like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And he took it, and I think like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, he came back with like most of it written.
Oh my God.
Or at least like a really solid outline, and it just blew me away. And then we spent, several years desperately trying to find a way to make it, which is kind of what you do as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I also just want to clarify that I had uploaded a script to the Blacklist website. I was not on any Blacklist list. I want to clarify that. Just as much as I would like to say that, but
we've got this rebel writer.
That's amazing. That's so crazy how this can be like such a small world that something like this can happen. And one of the things that I really liked about the story was that you kind of centered it around 3 different fandoms. Because for our listeners, there's the horror fan that loves all the kind of like Italian type, like deep cut horror films, and then you have the female character. She like loves the kind of indie rock band that no one's ever heard of, and then you have the other guy that loves like old arcade games. And I thought that was one of the most interesting aspects of the film, is how alone in their own love for their thing that they kind of are, and that's kind of how they come together.
Yeah, I felt like that was sort of how I kind of came of age in the 90s, and the film's set in the 90s, and I felt like that was kind of my experience back then, is that me and my very small group of friends were like super into, various things like anime, and at the time there wasn't a lot of anime on the shelves, and it seemed everybody had these little pockets of interest, And,
it's such a melancholic time because you didn't have like the ability to just reach out to people on the internet.
Exactly.
And kind of meet. So like it kind of did feel at the time, I was growing up like a huge horror fan, and it was hard to find people that kind of shared that interest in the 90s.
Yeah, my friends' parents, they sound a lot like Andreas's folks because they had just a huge library of VHS tapes that they had recorded, like tons of horror movies. So it was good getting into a group of people that sort of understood, that this stuff was valuable and important.
Right.
That's so fun. It's funny because I'm a little bit younger, and so I grew up sort of with the, like, half with the internet, half not with the internet. So, like, at the beginning of my horror love, I didn't have as many people. So it was a lot of me, like, illegally downloading movies and watching them and, like educating myself on horror. So it is, like, really interesting about, like, just kind of how alone you can feel in and then find, like, the importance of finding community and how happy and how much it can change just your perspective on the thing that you love so much.
Yeah, I was definitely the same. I was in that generation that was in between, like, right before the internet was everything and then right after. And so it was kind of strange, like that little before period when I was, like, I don't know, between 5 and 10, in between my parents showing me these horrific movies. Just like finding and discovering, like, I remember my go-to move, because my dad, both my parents were, really big into movies, and my dad wanted to be a film critic when he grew up, but he ended up being a doctor, but he still had this, like, big love of film growing up. And so he was one of those people who figured out, if you rent a tape and play it on one VHS or VCR player, you can record it on another. And so growing up, we always had this, like, library of, like, 2,000 movies in our basement. And I would always get my dad's, like, Leonard Maltin guide and be like, okay, what's got 3 stars, what looks good, and just run through the list and see if my dad had it. And it was just like this really, and then whatever, if I watched one movie and then there was another one on that tape, I just randomly would discover that one. And it was very, very fun and organic. Not that the internet, like, I don't think I would have gotten into, like, 75% of the movies I've gotten into since then if I didn't have the internet and the different communities you can find on there. But yeah.
Eric, how did you get started in animation? I'm always curious how, like, that comes to fruition.
Well, in high school, I kind of messed around with some animation a little bit. I was in, like, a radio, television, film class. They do, like, the news and all that. And I did, like, a little animated logo. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. And then I went to Austin for college. But before college, I got the rare opportunity to work on Waking Life. If you've seen that film, the Richard Linklater rotoscope film. Because the guy that wrote the program, Bob Sabston, who designed the program for the rotoscoping, his first short film was all about my brother. And my brother's autistic, and so they did, like, a little short film about him. And Richard Linklater loved the short, and it led to making the film. And so I guess he heard of me. I'm like an artist. I want to be an artist, and Bob gave me a shot. So he let me animate a little bit on the film. Not like a huge amount, but I got to be in the room with all the animators, and just, like, I fell in love with it, like, right there,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing opportunity.
Oh, I know, yeah. And the rest of it, I'm self-taught with animation. I haven't gone to school for it.
Cool.
So I just went home and started creating stuff.
That's amazing. Wow. And so you use this really cool paper style of animation. Is there, like, a specific name for it that I'm just butchering?
I just call it, like, cut paper stop motion.
Cool. It's absolutely gorgeous, but
Can you explain what it is to our listeners?
Okay, so I take card stocks or various types of paper, and it's all shot with the tripod pointed down, so it's all flat on the surface, and then I shoot it and then put the layers together digitally in post. So, like, for instance, it's very difficult to have characters kind of walk, like, past each other if you're just laying all the paper out right then and there. Like, you can only imagine. I used to use like a multi-plane glass layers to do this, but now I shoot my stuff on, like, blue or green screen, basically, or blue paper and green paper, and it sort of does the same trick. Gives me a lot of flexibility to pull off various shots. So it's like a blending of traditional animation with modern sensibilities.
Cool, because I was going to say it's gorgeous, but it seems absolutely time intensive. Like, how long did it take you to animate and create Attack of the Demons? Just like the shooting part and making everything.
Just shooting took me 9 months, but if you ask any animator, it'll blow their minds because that's kind of ridiculous. But for my day job, I work freelance animation, and over the years I've been working, I've just learned, I guess, how to be the most efficient animator possible. Otherwise, I starve. So,
yay, freelancing!
Yeah, I know. It's horrible. So it's like trial by fire. So at this point, I was thinking, before I made my first feature, is is it even possible for one person to animate a feature by themselves? I was like, well, shit. I directed 8 music videos this year, and if I tally up how long they all were, it's 40 minutes or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to fucking do it. So I did Pat the Blood, and then it just sort of went from there.
Cool. That's so cool. That's amazing. So you do it by yourself?
Yep.
All the animating? That's so impressive.
I can't afford anyone else.
Fair enough.
I would love to get a team together and make something really beautiful. But for right now, I think I just have to kind of hustle till I can raise some budgets.
But, the fact that you created a horror movie that was pretty gory and kind of gross with just one person, it's really cool.
Yeah, Andreas told me throughout the entire production there was a mantra, more slime. So...
That's a great mantra, I will say.
I think what's amazing, and we'll link to the you have a teaser trailer out on YouTube, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But what I find so amazing is how you can make it look, kind of going on the slime aspect of it, so slimy for something that's literally
that's
just paper.
Yeah,
it's so amazing.
And the slime, I mean, that was a big issue for me. Andreas is saying more slime, and the animator in me is it is so hard to animate slime with paper.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much I love the blood spurts and everything that happens, because I'm staring at this, and when I first watched it, I had such a huge smile on my face the entire time, because I'm this is just amazingly animated that I'm believing that it's actual blood when I know that Uncanny Valley that it's paper.
Yeah, that was very important to me to sort of try my hardest to make it feel as much like a live action as possible. So just the camera choices and the shot compositions, just try to make it look filmic, because as you know, there's not a lot of animated horror films out there. No, and so it's a little terrifying to walk into new territory. So trying to give people something they're comfortable with while also doing my own thing, and I wanted it to be taken seriously. I didn't want to release something that was kind of over the top, and Andreas can attest to that. From the very beginning, we were this is going to be a legit film, we're going to take it, we're going to play it up straight.
Yeah, we wanted minimal winking at the camera.
Right, and I think that's what surprised me the first time I watched it, because I honestly, all I heard was that it was animated, that people compared the animation style to early South Park.
Yep.
And and that it was about zombies and demons, and I'm okay, so what is this gonna be? And I was really surprised at how emotional and melancholy the whole story was, and I think you guys definitely succeeded on creating something that feels like a I mean, not to be pejorative, but a real film. It's not winky. It's funny, but it's definitely a straight narrative, and I really dug that.
Thank you. That
so
means a lot. Yeah, I mean, we definitely approached it from, because we just felt that the easy path for this movie, and I guess it's kind of hard to get into with. I don't want to spoil the movie for anything because it's not out yet, but we know, knowing that the movie, as you were talking about, is about these 3 characters, where it's one is really into movies, and one is into music, and one is into video games, and it's we didn't want to. We just felt the easy path was to be and then he identifies this trope from horror movies and uses that to their advantage, and isn't that funny, because this is a horror movie. And not to say that can't be done well in movies, it was just we didn't really, that was very much not our intention going into it. So yeah, that was how we were looking at it.
And I definitely appreciated that when I was watching it. Like I said, it was the first film that I saw for Cinepocalypse, and it was one of my favorites of that festival for sure, because it took things seriously.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. But Andreas, so we talked a little bit about how Eric got into animation. How did you get into writing? Is that something you've always been interested in? Or
yeah, it was from a very early age. Like, I was that weird kid who was like writing 30-page handwritten stories, like, and basically just like all I cared about was the writing part of school. And like, yeah. And so, just, and that was just something that thankfully my parents really fostered. And originally I always wanted to be like, I always envisioned being like a novelist or something like that. But like, around like 12, I just I found my parents' like video camera and started making these like little movies with like my action figures and stuff like that. And it just kind of built from there. And then then going from wanting to be a novelist, I always had the vision of like, yeah, I'm going to be like a writer director. I'm going to be, I'm going to do everything. And then I had a creative partner that I grew up with, and he has since become a lawyer, but like we had made a couple short films together, and basically just being on sets with him, I was like, oh, I'm not a director, like, at all. Like, I'm the person who's just like, just get the one take and we're good. I just want to go home. Like, I don't want to be here. And I very quickly decided, because I also went to film school for a year and decided to switch after a year at that point, just because I could tell that directing isn't for me, and I just wanted to go all in on the writing. So I switched to just completely focus on writing. And so it is definitely something that was fostered from a very young age to where I'm at now.
That's awesome. So I know Attack of the Demons has been moving along the festival runs. What are your plans for it? Are you guys still seeking distribution, or is it going to be hitting more festivals soon? Or
no more festivals. That ride's over. It was a good one, I guess. But we do have a sales rep, and it's sort of being shopped around. So fingers crossed that something happens with it. Hopefully, if you people are listening.
Yes.
Please, someone distribute this movie. It's so good. We need more animated horror.
Yes.
It's my call. That's me. I'm a good advertising person.
You should just read these scripts that Andreas has wrote. We've got like several horror films like ready to go.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Can you talk about anything, or you guys want to keep it under wraps?
Andreas?
Yeah, I mean, I will do my best to not just like dive completely in. I think, and this we can mention, because I know, Eric, you mentioned this at our at the Q&A at the screening, so this isn't like some secret, but we do have a sequel for Attack of the Demons written.
Oh.
And it's not what we want to make next, but we do have it. And it's something I think we both really like, and it's something completely different. But yeah, our main mission with whatever our next project is, I would say we have something like 3 or 4 movies that we would be over the moon to jump into next. None of them are really like Attack of the Demons. They're definitely range from like, I mean, like, we have a couple that aren't even horror at all, but I would say the other horror strips we have are less fun.
Oh yeah.
And all animated?
Yeah.
That's
cool.
the goal.
Awesome. Oh, that's so cool, though. Because, again, like we've said a bunch of times, we need more animated horror, and I feel like you can do such cool stuff with animation and horror. Like, I feel like you can do even weirder stuff with bodies and gore and creatures. And I just think it's such a cool medium that isn't explored enough. There's a little bit more in like anime, like Japanese animation, but definitely not enough American animation.
Yeah, and I was super inspired by the Japanese animation. Like, it was films like Akira that made me see, like, okay, this could actually be something I would want to do, because I mean, I like kids' films. I grew up with them, but I wanted to be a filmmaker and an animator too, and just being able to tell adult stories in my medium, that's the goal. That's like the life mission.
Have you watched Parasite? Not the
I have
not
not
the Korean
seen it
movie, but the show, the Japanese anime show Parasite.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Cool. It's body horror, and like this really creepy creature inhabits his hand, and it's like a very interesting body horror anime. So it's just maybe interesting for you to check out if you like that kind of stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, totally.
It's gross, but it's really cool.
I'm always looking for that sort of stuff.
Please check it out. It's on Hulu.
Oh, really? Cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There seems to be so much more interesting anime and availability here, I guess, in the United States. Like, it's always been interesting, but like it's always been hard to find until like recently. Like I was watching the stuff that's coming to Netflix in January, and they have a whole section just talking about the anime that's hidden in January, and I think that's so awesome to see that now. Whereas before, it's like I had to buy pirated copies of Cowboy Bebop to watch.
Stay up until 2 a.m. to watch Adult Swim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that.
That's what I did. So, do you want to start talking about what we've been watching, Terry?
Yes.
So, Terry, what have you been watching?
Okay. So I know we have a big episode, so I don't want to focus too much, but there's been a lot that's happened since we recorded last. I mean, just recently alone, there's been Daniel Isn't Real came out. The Knives and Skin came out. And then this little movie that surprised the absolute fuck out of me called I See You, which was released the same date back in like the 6th of December. Have you guys seen or heard of this movie?
I haven't
like
heard
the poster, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I really want to watch it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
It's one of those movies where like I got sent the screener and I completely forgot about it until I was in PAX and I got an email from the PR people like, "Hey, are we going to see a review?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, I guess I should probably watch this." And I wasn't really expecting too much of it, but it is probably it might break my top 10 this year.
Oh, really?
It's very twisty. It's very there's a lot going on in it. The first act is basically this pitch perfect story about this serial kidnapper of kids, potentially, that might be somehow operating from outside of a prison that he's been in for 15 years. In the opening scene, this kid is like yanked off his bike by some unknown force, and then this house where the police officer that's going to be investigating the case lives, all of a sudden weird things start happening in there. His silverware vanishes.
What are you talking about?
What's that?
What are you talking about? This is wild.
The TV starts to turn on and off, and the volume gets cranked up, and Helen Hunt is in it.
What?
And she plays his wife, and then like it takes a turn, and that's all I want to say about the movie. It's wild, it's crazy, it was really effective. It kept me enraptured on the screen, sitting in my hotel room in Philadelphia when I wasn't doing anything.
So the mask on the poster, it looks like a kappa. Am I reading that right?
It's like yes, I would say that it's definitely pulling from that. I think it's technically supposed to be a frog.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't want to really talk about that mask, but it is because it kind of the movie's very surprising, and that's all I'll say. I would really recommend going to check it out, especially if you're working on looking at end of the year lists. It might be a dark horse contender. But then the other thing I just want to talk really quickly about is I think everyone is sleeping on Servant, this Apple TV Plus show.
I'm scared to watch it.
It's another goddamn streaming service.
What were you saying, Andreas?
I was just saying I want to see it so bad. That trailer did so many things for me, and I'm in that mode where like I'm waiting for it to be out so we can get like the free Apple Plus trial and then bang it out in a week or something. But like,
yeah,
I thought it looked so good, and then hearing how positive you've been feeling about it, I've wanted to see it so bad.
It's so fucking good. I think it might be. I mean, I don't think it's probably the best show I've seen this year. Because I mean, I just started watching Watchmen, and that's pretty amazing. But but it's definitely, I think, the best horror show that I've seen. I guess since the house, what was that? The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's a nice slow burn. The episodes are only about 30 minutes each, but it's one of those that like I have the entire season because I managed to secure a screener, but I've been watching it one after another because I'm doing a recap with Joe Lipsett and of the Horror Queers, and it's so good, but I don't see anyone talking about it on Twitter, and I don't know if it's because it's Apple TV and people are like the whole, another streaming service, or if it's because of the M. Night connection, which I just want to point out, he directed, I think, 2 episodes, but he hasn't written anything. It's all written by the creator that I can't think of what his name is off the top of my head right now. But, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of talent going in on it. The cinematographer is one that worked with The Lighthouse and The Witch.
Oh, wow.
The other cinematographers worked on, I can't remember what the other movie is, but another like high level horror film franchise and stuff. It's just there's so much going into it. There's so much talent behind and in front of the screen that I just it boggles my mind that I hardly see anything about it outside of like the reviews of the first 3 episodes that posted. But I really, really, really recommend people check it out.
I'm afraid to watch it because I've got like 3 kids and it looks like it involves like a baby dying. I'm like, I don't want to think about that. It's hard for me to. There's so many movies out like right now that like a kid dies. Like I'm afraid to watch Tigers Aren't Real or Not Afraid.
Yes. Tigers Not Afraid. Yep.
Yeah, but I know I've got to like will myself to do it, but it's hard when you're a parent.
That. No, I completely, that makes perfect sense to me because it is about a set of parents that are grieving the loss of a child, and the wife has been catatonic, and the only thing that's brought her out of this catatonia is this lifelike doll that her therapist has given to do this like transient I forget what they call it, but basically this therapy to like wean yourself off of the idea of losing a kid. And
that sounds too much for me. I don't know if I can do
it. I completely understand. I get that. It's definitely there's definitely a lot of melancholy to it, and it's, man.
My wife was horrified last year by Hereditary. We had no idea what was going to happen going into it. No. And just like, oh God.
Oh, that's awful.
So she's like, I love M. Night, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's a pretty awful thing to be like thrown into without knowing.
I know, like, let's watch this movie tonight. Hooray! And
then you're like, this is not what I was expecting at all.
But she agreed that the ending was just like such a sweet payoff that it was kind of worth it. So
yeah.
I might have to check out Servant now.
I really recommend it, but I will warn you, the whole show is about the grieving of this.
Okay.
But I mean, okay, I'm gonna spoil the first episode for people, so if you don't want to know, skip ahead. But at the very end of the first episode, the plastic baby is replaced by a real baby somehow.
Oh, fuck off.
This sounds kind of goes so awesome.
And it goes from there. Like, I don't want to like spoil things, but that happens at the very end of the very first episode, and that's kind of the hook. Because like this entire time they've had this person, this nanny in the house, and she's really weird, and she kind of hangs these Blair Witchy crosses everywhere, and then all of a sudden the baby is back, and everyone is acting, except for the husband, like this is the way it's always been.
That does sound intriguing.
I just can't handle that, and I really want to watch it.
It's so good, Mary Beth. I think you would love it.
I know, but I just don't want another streaming service. I already have so many bills.
I know. But I mean, the good news is that by January, it'll all be out, and it'll be 1 month. You get, I think you get like a week free with.
Okay.
Apple,
because
so you can
I just can't. I just principle.
30-minute episodes, so you could like.
They're only 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's even okay. That's even better because I feel like the 1 hour episodes are too much of a commitment to do. Like,
it'd basically be like 5 hours. Like it's basically a 5-hour movie.
Oh, it's only 5 episodes.
It's 10, but they're 30 minutes each. So.
I can't do math.
But that's me.
That's why I'm in communications with animals and not.
I've taken up too much time. What are you watching, Mary Beth?
Okay, what am I watching? So I'm trying to play catch up for 2019 because I feel like I'm behind on literally everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally watched Daniel Isn't Real, and
Yes.
it's like the best thing I've ever seen.
Oh, I loved it.
I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I listen to the soundtrack all the time, which is probably bad for my mental health, but that's fine. I texted Tara that I want to fuck the soundtrack. Weird, but it's fine.
It's fine.
It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's such an interesting way of personifying mental illness. There's a line in it where his mom says it's like a spark going off in my head, like a lightning strike. And I'm bipolar, so even though his mom is schizophrenic and it's very different, like mood disorders and mental illness is a very similar description to how I feel when I have manic episodes. So it was such like an relatable in a way movie. That sounds strange, but it was like a very interesting and careful look at mental illness in a horror movie, and I really loved it. The performances are absolutely amazing. I can't gush enough about it. Have you guys have all of you seen it?
I saw it at Graveyard Shift, and the director gave a pretty awesome Q&A after, too.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
Really good.
Yeah.
We're hoping to have him on. Spoiler, but we're hoping to have him on eventually.
That would be
cool.
amazing. And then I finally watched Tigers Are Not Afraid. It was like someone kicked me in the heart, and it was beautiful. I mean, I knew it was going to be good. Like, everyone has been talking about it for a long time, and I finally watched it, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. Issa Lopez is an amazing filmmaker, and it's just I know that there was a lot of stuff on Twitter about politics and horror film, but she blended the idea of politics, not even politics, social issues and horror in such a beautiful and impressive way that illuminates issues without it being pandering or lecturing or didactic. It was just very effective. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and she highlights an issue that I don't think gets discussed much. Is that the aftermath of the shit that's happening, right? So the kids, the orphans, it's a group of people that don't have a voice, and by taking that and spinning it up in a kind of a Guillermo del Toro fairy tale aspect is just. It's very powerful, I thought.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I don't think I expected it to be as sad as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another one that scares me, like I said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. You would really like it, but you would be very upset by it with children. I mean, the whole entire thing is just very sad, bad things happening to children.
Yeah, I think I can handle it. It's one that I have to watch, but I might let my wife skip it.
That's probably a good idea. It's just and it's very important. It's a very important movie. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that Shudder picked it up and it has distribution that a lot more people can see it and have the opportunity to watch it.
I saw it at Telluride Horror Show last year, and at the time and for the longest time, they're like, we have no U.S. distribution. And I'm like, this is, I mean, kind of... It makes some kind of ironic sense that a movie kind of about this and the kind of climate we're living in was not getting U.S. distribution. There's definitely some kind of commentary there, unwitting commentary maybe, but it just I'm so pleased with Shudder for picking that up, as well as One Cut of the Dead, the fact that
One Cut was so good,
right. Oh, that is another real... I saw that one last year, and I keep forgetting it's this year, because I watched it last year on, a whim. Someone emailed me a screener, because there was an Asian film festival in Chicago, and I was like, oh, there's a horror movie. That's so exciting. And I watched it, and I was like, excuse me, why is no one else talking about it?
Right.
And if you haven't seen it, everyone, it's a really cool zombie movie that you should watch on Shudder, and don't look anything up when you go see it. Just watch it. It's real good.
What about you guys, Eric and Andreas? What have you guys been watching or reading or seeing or?
Well, have you guys seen I Lost My Body?
No, but I
No, was that the
really
Netflix
want to watch
thing?
it.
Yeah, it's animated. It's a French animated film. It's very much an adult animation, and it is gorgeous. It's one of my favorites of the year, for sure, of any film.
Yeah, I saw it pop up on Netflix, and I added it to my queue. I just haven't had a chance to watch it. What is it about exactly?
It's about a severed hand that's trying to find its way back to, its body. And then it's also about sort of like a love story between a guy and a girl he's got a crush on. And it comes together really beautifully at the end. I don't want to say too much about it, but it was very poignant. And after I saw it, I think I wrote Andreas, I'm like, this is what we have to do. We got to do something like this. We got to say something. Like, I've got this film that I want to make that it's like a poem. And that's the only way I can describe it. Just like a moving poem, like beautiful and lush. But maybe it's for like 15 people will dig it because it's very experimental. But yeah, I'm just so inspired by animation from around the world. Countries like France that let the filmmakers just take these giant risks and make these films that can't be done in any other medium and tell very emotional stories that I don't feel like American audiences seem to allow their animation to do, or at least get funded for.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of those emotions in animated films are meant for children. Because, I've seen a lot of Disney movies that make me have emotions, but again, those are geared towards children, and like you said, there's not a lot of adult animated films that try to elicit those kinds of emotions.
Yeah,
in the US.
I guess they feel like the performances wouldn't carry it since it's not a real person, but man, that film was animated so beautifully, and there's so much subtle animation between the characters. It feels very real. I was trying to do that with Attack of the Demons to kind of feel like these are real characters acting, but this film just it blew me away. This is some stellar stuff.
That's amazing. I really want to check. I've actually seen quite a few people talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah,
as being
definitely. It's on Netflix. So.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. But I feel like that happens with a lot of Netflix stuff nowadays, is they sort of come out of nowhere.
Well, especially animated features from around the world. I mean, we barely get any of them,
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of animated features, there's a really good movie called Funan that you should check out. It's talking about.
Ooh, I've heard about that one. Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's really sad, but it's taking memoir and animating it, and it's an interesting way of kind of rehashing trauma and memory through animation. So I would check that one out too.
Yeah, that one's on the top of my list as well.
Cool. What about you, Andreas?
I'm trying to think about how to talk about this without it sounding so lame. But has anyone here ever heard of Pets Cop?
Only through you.
Yeah, I've talked to Eric about it for a while. So it's a YouTube series that has been periodically released episodes, months apart sporadically, without warning, without fanfare. And basically the basic premise of the series is it's a fake Let's Play video of an old PlayStation 1 game. But the game itself isn't real. So so throughout the series, the person who's playing the game and kind of narrating it slowly discovers that there might be some sort of spirit stuck in the game. And it started in 2017, and it's this very mysterious series that no one knew who was making it. There's no credits, there's no advertisements for it, there's nothing. And it is something I got really invested in over the course of the past 2 years, of just oh wow, there's a new Pets Cop video that came out. And it's so fucking good. And it's so hard to describe, because the second anyone recommends to me this YouTube series about a fake Let's Play, my eyes will shoot out the back of my head, how much I'm rolling them. But I cannot recommend it enough. And it's very recently, in the past couple weeks, it ended. And like, one of the crazy things about the show was that no one knew, like, an episode would come out and then there would be no indication that the series is over, but a new episode wouldn't have come out in like 10 months, and people were like, well, I guess it's over. And it very recently had a definitive ending. And so if you're into kind of PlayStation 1 era, like, horror game nostalgia, but also I mean, but then just kind of the level of craftsmanship and, like, construction that went into it like boggles my mind. And then just the added point of the mystery behind it, because to this day, like, the person who created it came out recently on Twitter and was like, hey, by the way, I made Pets Cop, and kind of proved it through saying something was going to happen, and then it happened in the show. But still, he won't let anyone, he's turned down, like, interviews, like, no one knows who this guy is. It is again, probably sounds super whack, but cannot recommend it enough.
I started playing it by accident. This is extremely my shit.
Oh yeah, and
it's check this out.
Yeah, and it's in the best possible way. It is very difficult. Like, you get nothing out of it. Like, it doesn't really give you anything. It's like, it's so rewarding, and I love it so much.
Cool. I'm going to watch this tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to add it to my list.
Cool. And everyone who's listening, we'll make sure to link it in the show notes so you can check it out.
Absolutely.
If you want to.
Yeah, I think there's 24 episodes. There's like 3 or 4 hours worth of content, I think. But
that's not bad at all.
It's great.
Like, in terms of watching television shows.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Cool. Oh my gosh, I'm very excited to watch this. There's an entire subreddit dedicated to it.
Oh yeah, I've been part of it for a long time.
That's amazing. I love learning about that kind of stuff. Like, these weird little niche things online that curate a very, very specific community. It's so cool. The internet sucks, but the internet's also pretty cool.
That sums it up.
Cool. So we have been talking about what we've been watching now, but let's go back to the past. What did you guys bring with you today for us to discuss?
All right. So I think I'm going first, and I brought The Dark Crystal.
Oh boy.
which to me it's funny because it seems kind of like an obvious choice. Like, it's this dark movie that was pretty, it's basically meant for kids, but it's very dark and like scary, and so it's understandable. Like, there's very, very aesthetically scary things about it, like the villains, or I guess I'm sorry, I feel like I jumped in.
That's fine. So we're just going to give a quick plot synopsis to catch everyone up who hasn't heard of The Dark Crystal or hasn't seen it before, and then we can jump into talking about it more.
Yes.
Terry, do you want to read it?
Sure. So, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there lived a dark crystal that, when cracked, created 2 opposing races: the malevolent Skeksis, and the mystical and kind Euros. Yay, Jim Henson and his words. There's a prophecy, because what good is a fantasy story without a prophecy, about another race of creatures called the Gelflings that would bring the crystal back together. So, of course, the Skeksis plan a mass genocide, but they don't get them all, and 1,000 years later, a Gelfling named Jen goes on a quest to find the missing piece of crystal, bring it to get to the bigger crystal, and, well, they kind of kill all the Skeksis. And The Dark Crystal.
It sounds
like interesting
it's just as wild as it sounds, guys. It's fucking wild.
So, how old were you when you saw this, Andreas?
I don't remember, because I just remember always having had seen it. Like, it's one of those movies where it's just for the Skeksis have been burned in my brain since, like, I remember being a year old. Yeah.
I hate that sound so... Whoever just did that, I hate you so much. It has been bothering me so much. I want to... Oh, stop. Hate it.
But like, so like I was saying, it has this incredible, dark, very like scary atmosphere, and it's like one of the things that I think is so, because like rewatching it, one of the things that was so striking about it is it has like the very kind of fun innocence of like the Muppets, and like I would argue probably closest honestly to like Fraggle Rock, but this would be like if the Fraggles were enslaved and mass murdered, and they just really don't shy away from it. But so that going into it is scary enough, but like the specific thing that always scared the shit out of me about this movie, and this is going to sound like some sort of criticism of the movie, and I don't want it to, because I think the movie is brilliant and it's like one of my favorite movies, and this is as someone who thinks that the new Dark Crystal show is probably the best thing that has come out this year, in my opinion. But I think the Gelflings are so fucking scary. Like,
let's talk about this, because those motherfuckers are the most horrifying things I've ever. They're scary, emotionless faces. I want to just drop kick Jen out of a window, out of just pure survival mode. Like I had never seen this movie before until last night, and I was just like, I had a visceral reaction to his horrifying face.
It probably doesn't help that his first appearance, he's naked, playing flute by the river.
Yeah, that was also very confusing. I was very confused about his weird naked puppet body. And his awful emotionless face. Because, like, all the other puppets have, like, very weird faces that are not humanoid. So it's like, okay, I'm like, I can get behind the emotionless nature of this, but he looks like a person. So he's, like, trying to convey sadness, but it's just like, oh no, master. I'm like, I hate it. I hate it so much. And your weird little body moves creepily, and you look like a scary boy, and I hate it.
So for me, what the point, and I identified it later on in my life, but it was something that just struck terror into me as a kid, specifically. So in the movie, whenever they have close-up shots of the Gelflings, they are, you know, typical, they're conventional Muppet puppets, and in the faraway shots, they transition to actors in Gelfling suits, and
that's what that is.
Yeah, and so that it's so. I also, as a child, had a very strong fear of like dolls coming to life, and so the transition of a Gelfling moving like a puppet to the next shot, then running like a human, just it rose the emotion in me of, oh my god, this toy is coming to life, and it's so scary to me.
Oh my god.
I mean, there is an odd disconnect. There's such an odd disconnect. Like, I realized it watching this, because it had been, I don't even know, maybe 30 years since I had seen this movie, and that was something that jumped out at me this time, was the disconnect between when you see them up close and then knowing that they're like kids or actors or whatever in clothes in like the later ones. So I completely understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and then I didn't notice it until rewatching it this next time. It doesn't help that, like, there are shots where they utilize that shot is like really far away shots. So like Jen, the Gelfling, will be like, you know, will be on a mountainscape, and then Jen will like come over, you know, a ledge and like look down at the camera, and like in my brain, it feels like he's caught you, like you're it feels like you were hiding from him and he spotted you, and like it's and like that. More than the Skeksis, like I think growing up I thought the Skeksis were cool because they like kind of reminded me of Godzilla or something like that. Like, and then the Podlings being enslaved was scary, but just the Gelflings in this movie just scare. And I don't know if anyone remembers I ran into the same issue in A Muppet Christmas Carol, where the Spirit of Christmas Past is like this doll floating in the air that looks very much like a Gelfling, and of all the shit that happens in that movie, that was the part where I had to like close my eyes because of how scary I thought that was. And so I was heavily traumatized by, you know, the scariest part of this movie being up front and center, and what was supposed to be like the hero of the movie.
The hero
just scared me. So
That makes me feel so much better. Like I tweeted today that the Dark Crystal is an uncanny valley of nightmares. That's because of those fucking gelflings.
Yeah, right. and it's a problem they definitely fixed for the new show. Like, and
did they?
In my opinion, they did, because I didn't get any of those feelings watching the new show. I was all in on these new gelflings. And like, I think it's just because their face, like the puppetry has become more sophisticated, and like they can emote more, and they like contoured the faces, so there's like more definition instead of just this slab of blank doll face that. Yeah.
Well, and I think what also I kind of realize this time is that I think what makes them so terrifying is that the other creatures in this movie have so much personality to them. Mm-hmm. Like the Urus with their like kind of like old man frumpy faces, and the Skeksis that are just constantly like sneering, and they have so much character to them. And then you have the Gelflings that just look like a kabuki mask, or like, you know, this kind of like just like this non-living entity that is somehow staring into your soul.
I recently subjected my children to the Dark Crystal.
Did you really? How'd they like it?
Well, my 5-year-old is the only one that really paid attention. It sort of enraptured her, and I could tell that she was pretty freaked out, because at the end she's like, a lot of scary stuff happened in it, but the ending was happy, so I guess I feel okay. Yeah, pretty much.
I feel okay.
Also, Andreas, my nickname was the Gelfling, because my mom always called me a Gelfling. So,
oh no,
I am the Gelfling,
so
and I am coming for you.
That's why I can't look Eric in the eye. It's too much.
We just like shit on Gelflings for like 5 straight minutes, and Eric's like, I was called a Gelfling as a child.
I know. I am a Gelfling.
I am a Gelfling. Sorry.
So when did you see this, Eric? Did you grow up with it too, or
with Dark Crystal?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I loved it. But yes, it is scary.
And I mean, there's definitely a certain amount of it that's very much intentional. Like it's, you know, like I was reading a little bit about the movie, and apparently Jim Henson's was like, yeah, I think kids should be scared sometimes. Like that's healthy. Yeah. Which I kind of, you know, I mean, like I mean, look at me. I grew up watching The Shining when I was 9 years old. So like I am a big proponent of that worldview, but I just feel like the things I was supposed to be scared of weren't the scary things in the movie.
Yeah, your hero is the scariest thing in the movie, Henson.
Yes.
Like getting past my hatred of the Gelflings, like it is such a visually impressive movie. Like the puppets are so cool, and I hate puppets. They scare the shit out of me, and this movie made me realize that. But at the same time, it's like so impressive that they were able to do such a like expansive story with just puppets.
Yeah, and the world is beautiful, the landscapes and all that.
It's gorgeous.
And it's so full of life. Like everything, there's so much going on in the foreground and in the background. From like, I love the little black balls of fuzz that are scurrying around the Skeksis castle, or like the vines that are like grabbing people, or like just the plants that are like almost like anemones that are sort of like moving in and out on each. There's so much going on.
Yeah,
that it's amazing, and it was so cool to watch it again and see what could be accomplished with puppets.
Has anyone here seen? Am I the only one who's seen the new show, the Netflix show, the
I've
Dark
seen
Crystal?
The first 2 episodes.
I wanted to watch it before this episode. I just didn't have time, so I have not.
It's a commitment, but it's everything that like I feel like I was supposed to feel about the Dark Crystal as a child. I got in the show, so I highly recommend. The show. Like the Gelflings to me are whimsical and fun, and I feel super attached to them, whereas, you know, I don't want to see Jen again.
But I think the most important question for me is my bae in it is Agra in the...
Oh yeah.
Okay, can we talk about her and her like giant boobs and her nipples that are like poking out? She's a goddamn puppet. Why does she have such like obvious nipples?
Okay, I didn't even notice the nipples.
You didn't? How did you not? Her titties are huge.
Are they? I don't even remember that. I remember the eye.
Well, yeah, the eye, obviously. I'm talking, like, maybe I'm gross, but, like, I was, like, very concerned about why she had such largely protruding nipples, and I was like, this is a children's movie. What is happening? Like, have you seen The Last Unicorn, that animated movie?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it reminded me of that giant, like, harpy with the big tits.
Oh, okay. So I just pulled up a picture of, and she definitely, it is cold in there. It is a little nipply.
She's up high on the mountain. I mean, you know.
Anyway,
Wow,
I'm sorry, not to hate on your bae, but, like, that was a very weird thing that I noticed today.
I just love her. I want to be here when I grow up.
Well, then you'll love the show because there's a lot of Agra in the show.
Oh, okay, good.
She's sure something.
So it had been, I think it's been like 30 years maybe since I've seen this movie, and the thing that struck me is immediately when the music started playing in the beginning, I was immediately brought back to when I was a kid and saw this. I love the score.
It's so
good.
Yeah,
the score is beautiful.
But what I realized was, like, every time that a scene would happen, I was like, oh my god, I remember being terrified of the scene as a kid. Like the dying emperor, first of all.
Oh man, yeah.
He's like. He's just like a pile of bones and feathers, and he's hacking at them and lashing out at them, and like everyone is like huddled around him just waiting for him to die, like a pack of vultures, which I guess makes sense because they kind of are vultures. But like I'm like, this is gnarly stuff for a kid movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt bad showing my kids that part. It's like, we haven't even had this conversation yet.
Oh no!
They learned about
and
death.
His body just
during
disintegrates.
In that moment.
Or like after the Trial of Stone, when the Chamberlain loses, and then they strip him, and they're like literally pulling off every like bits of him.
It's
and
so
all of a sudden,
harsh.
it's just like, I'm like, good God, this is dark. I mean, they literally pluck him, and he's just this terrifyingly naked animal.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes the Skeksis so effective is that, like, there's something so realistic about the evil that they are. Like, they are just the incarnate of, like, the absence of goodness. And like they're just like these beings that are so selfish and only care about their own weird delights that but that's like a weird kind of, like, that's an evil that I think it like is very present at times. Like, you can identify that, like, in the real world is like it's not like they're not evil for evil's sake per se. Like, they're evil because it makes them feel good, which is like a weird, very weird thing that made them super effective, I think, as bad guys for a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Ugh. And the dinner scene, I love that, where they have like utensils to go on their fingers.
I kind of want to get in on that.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, I could mess around with some finger forks.
Oh man, finger forks.
I hadn't seen this. I don't know why I hadn't seen this movie until yesterday. I love them. Like, I grew up watching Jim Henson stuff, but I guess my parents thought it was like too weird for me, and I just missed it, and then I never watched it. But I had like friends who were obsessed with it, and I was about to watch it, and my boyfriend was like, solid. Don't ever want to watch it again. And I was like, why? He's like, we'll see. And I watched it. He's like, how'd you hear about the Gelflings? I was like, fuck them. And he's like, yep, there it is.
Fuck the Gelflings.
So
did you watch The Labyrinth growing up at all, Mary?
No.
Oh my god.
I was deprived as a child.
I love The Labyrinth.
I just feel like my parents were not super into, like, it just feels bad to say they weren't into whimsical stuff, because that makes it sound like they didn't like give me a childhood, which is like not accurate. But they just like were not like, I guess they just thought it was like too weird. But like I turned out the way I did anyway, so like it obviously didn't do anything. Like I'm obviously like a freak.
Well,
so
I mean, your dad was also too terrified of demons.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's like I went from like kid stuff to horror. There was not like an in between. It was just like I jumped right into it at a young age.
Yeah.
There wasn't like that kind of like nice little padding of like the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth that were like fun, but also terrifying.
Right.
So yeah, no, I didn't grow up with that, which is unfortunate because I love David Bowie.
And he rocks a nice cod piece in that.
Show does. Anyway, on that note,
and to segue into the next
Eric's movie,
which I want to say before you announce it, and on the surface, this seems kind of like an odd pairing, but really, when you look at Attack of the Demons, it kind of fits both in terms of like a different style of telling a story, and then also the horror and so in some ways this seems like a perfect pairing, because Eric, what did you bring with you today?
Well, mine is none other than Night of the Living Dead.
A modern masterpiece.
Yes.
I love it. So Mary Beth, do you want to?
Yes. So for those of you who have never heard of Night of the Living Dead, I'm so sorry. But as you know, in this time, this is a very cynical summary, everybody. So get ready. As you know, in this time before modern cinema, where political intent was mainly just subtext, The Night of the Living Dead has absolutely no point to make by pitting a group of typical Americans against an end-of-the-world scenario filled with zombies. It is absolutely just about zombies and not about the political climate. So when Barbara, Judith O'Day, runs from the cemetery and finds Ben, Dwayne Jones, and company in a farmhouse before being forced to not only confront the reanimated corpses of Americans, but also the living Americans, including the local militia, director George Romero absolutely was not making a textual examination of the current world fears.
So, I watched this movie to prepare for this right after the whole Twitter row happened, with Joe Bob Briggs talking about how he misses the time when movies weren't overtly political. And I'm watching this and I'm going, I don't know how someone that usually has such an erudite knowledge of film could say something, because George Romero was absolutely making a political statement with this, even if you take out the aspect of race that he says, that George Romero says is, was kind of a haphazard coincidence that Dwayne Jones got cast. This movie is so overtly political. But before we get to looking back at it now, what's the story with you, Eric? When did you see this? Can you set the scene? How old were you?
Yeah, so I must have been 10 or 11, somewhere around that. And we would go to Blockbuster Video and rent movies all the time. And my mom, she didn't really censor the things I chose to watch. And so I just thought it sounded intriguing, and just from the title of it. So I just put it on the stack, and I watched it by myself. My mom worked nights, so I was just there by myself watching it at night at the age of 10 or 11. And it scared the shit out of me, like really hardcore. I never really lost that. I'm still watching it now. I mean, it gives me the creeps. I just watched it again today just to be like super fresh. And it's very, very effective. But I think what got to me about it was it had like a documentary realism. So it seemed like I shouldn't have been watching this tape I got. Like it was kind of real seeming, like the acting even. I know it was a lot of amateur actors, but I think that just sold it more. And also I was so young, and at the time I still felt like the adults had their shit together. And then here's a movie where they do not. And the society is just completely falling apart, and they're doing, it just made me feel like, oh crap, the adults don't know what they're doing. And I could see this happening. It just seemed like such a realistic outcome of events. Like everything can just fall apart at any moment, and it would happen just like that quickly. So I think it just sort of long last sort of terrified me, just feeling about how fragile society is, really.
That's such an existential fear.
I know.
Having that when like you're 11 years old, and like I would be thinking like, oh gosh, there's a naked zombie. Oh my gosh, they're eating people. But that's fucking existential right there.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff was also scary too, where they're like munching down and having like a barbecue, and you can hear all like the gross sounds and stuff. Like that's also scary, but it was definitely the feeling like everything can fall apart that quickly, that sort of stuck with me. And it's kind of sobered me up at a young age, I think.
Yeah, wow. That's a big thing to realize and kind of come to terms with as a kid. Good God.
Yeah, and then I think, later on, just hearing about like Salem witch trials and how easy it is for people to just sort of turn on each other. It just like all that adds together. So I think it was definitely one of those important films in my life, just to teach those lessons. So yeah, whatever Joe Bob says about movies' intent, I mean, films have shit to say.
They sure do.
Right. Well, and I think when I was watching this, I did a little bit of digging around in like some interviews and stuff because I was so obsessed with this idea that films from that time period weren't political. And there was an interview that George Romero did in 1972, and you kind of picked up on it as an 11-year-old with the theme, because he said the story was an allegory written to draw a parallel between what people are becoming and the idea that people are operating on many levels of insanity that are only clear to themselves. And like, it just it goes to show like just how quickly society can just crumble. I mean, this was like, you go from her being attacked in the cemetery to the entire world just panicking and falling apart, and not being able to trust the people that you're with.
Yeah, it was very bold too. Like, I mean, they got like a kid that dies in it. Like, I don't think I was ready for that as a 10-year-old. And then also everybody dies, Yeah. And, like, I think I expected like they would get away, as a kid, like, it's going to be okay. They're going to be rescued or something, because that's what happens in movies, like happy ending. But then, no, it's just like, it has such a powerful ending. And I think it was just the gut punch that took it over the edge when I was young. I just remember sitting there watching the credits with all the still photos, just kind of in shock.
No.
That sort of thing stays with you for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about you seeing it when you were 11, because the kind of unique thing about this movie was that it was released right before the MPAA established a rating system. So it was one of the last true unrated films before the MPAA could rate things. And it premiered, because it was a horror movie, as an afternoon matinee. So like, all these kids went to go see it. And I found this really fun quote from Roger Ebert, where he said that the kids in the audience were stunned. There was almost complete silence. The movie had stopped being delightfully scary about halfway through and became unexpectedly terrifying. There was a little girl across the aisle from me, maybe 9 years old, who was sitting very still in her seat and crying.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to remember what sort of effect this movie might have had on you when you were 6 or 7, but try to remember at that age, kids take the events on screen seriously, and they identify fiercely with the hero. So when the hero is killed, that's not an unhappy ending, but a tragic one. Nobody got out alive. It's over. That's all. And it stuck to me, because I was like, really wanted to know how old you were when you saw it, because I can't imagine going to see this movie on like a Saturday matinee, and it's like, you're used to seeing, I'm sure, like, the 1930s movies and Frankenstein, or like whatever the latest silly sci-fi movie is, and then you get this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty intense. Watching it now is kind of interesting. Like, there's a moment, like, I don't know if you guys seen it. You saw it recently. Ben gets like the shotgun back, and then he just sort of like immediately shoots that guy, and that was kind of shocking. It's like, whoa, that's a bit harsh. Definitely, but it was still very, very effective for me.
Yeah. Had you guys seen it when you were a kid, or when did you guys first see this movie?
I saw it in my horror film college class when I was a sophomore in college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I saw it then. So it's still kind of, it scared me more than I was expecting it to. I think for a very long time, grew up thinking that classic horror was not worth watching and that it wasn't scary. So I'm pretty like woefully uneducated on a lot of the classics, which is something I'm slowly remedying and realizing that I was a very dumb teenager. But
as most of us were.
Yeah, stupid teenager. So I watched it and I was excited to see it because I was like, oh, cool, one of the first like cannibal zombie movies, and I was really surprised with how absolutely sobering it was, and how gory it was in parts, like actually pretty intense. And I really, really enjoyed it, and I did a lot of research into it, and like that was one of the movies that got me really, really fascinated with political commentary and social commentary in horror movies.
Doesn't exist.
I'll also say one more childhood memory, not related to Night of the Living Dead, but I was in the 3rd grade, and I remember waking up and Clockwork Orange was playing. So
Good God!
I know. So yeah, I remember just being really bewildered as like, what are the adults watching? You know, like
what are they doing? I don't understand.
Are all adult movies
like
this? Like, this is crazy. And I think I like saw the rape scene and everything, and I don't know. It's just
God.
Yeah. So that's one that stuck with me, but I wouldn't say that it. I guess maybe it did scar me for life. Come to think of it.
It's like you start talking about it, you're like, oh no, maybe this is. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean, I revisited it later, but I just remember thinking that, gosh, the adults are really watching some crazy stuff.
Those adults, man.
Yeah.
What are they watching? I don't know if I want to be an adult. What about you, Andreas? When did you see this?
So I grew up, like, my brother, one of my older brothers was like obsessed with the Romero zombie movies. So I saw it by osmosis through him, but I think I was kind of like you, Mary Beth, where I was not as a savvy 11-year-old as Eric was, and I was just like, it's in black and white. This is an old, boring movie, you know. This is and it's obviously, like, I watched it. I rewatched it, and I'm more scared of it now than I was as a kid. Like, I find it much more unnerving, and like. So yeah, it didn't have an effect on me as a kid, but that's totally my bad and not the movie's bad. Cause I was dumb and like scared of the doll people from Dark Crystal. Like, that's, but it's crazy. So I watching it again recently, I have like one of the rare pleasures of being married to someone who hasn't seen any of these movies, who hadn't seen any of these movies when I first met my wife. She hadn't seen like basically any of the tentpole horror sci-fi action movies from between like 1960 to 1995. And so like I got to introduce her to all these movies, and like we watched Night of the Living Dead just the other day, and like she had never seen it, and she did not know how it ended. Wow. And so like I'm just sitting there the whole time, and like my wife let out like an audible like no, like at the end, like when it happened, and it's still so effective, and it's just a masterpiece, and like from top to bottom, like to now, like I find like no fault in this movie. Yeah, so I've grown up a lot.
Yeah, I think for me, like my parents got divorced when I was like 4 or whatever, so I think I already saw like people like fighting and falling apart a little bit. So I might have been a little bit more easy to think that, oh, the adults don't have their shit together. Like I think I probably already knew it beforehand, but I was like, wait a minute. Everybody's crazy?
Oh, everyone's a kind of a piece of shit? Uh-oh. We're doomed!
Yeah.
It's a very nihilistic film.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and it's something that I kind of picked up while I was watching this, because so far it kind of touches on themes that we've discussed a surprising amount, Mary Beth, on this podcast. You know, there's the destruction of the heteronormative family unit. Mm-hmm. The kids are killing the parents. There's a lot of social issues. It's about how fucked America is. It's about the Vietnam War. It's about horror at home at a time when horror was abroad. It's about like all that kind of stuff, and it's amazing to me how much these films from this era, from the 60s up to the 80s, was just kind of about the same subject almost.
Yeah, and it's, I think, very much about race. Obviously, like the lead is black, and he's the only black character. But I think in an interview, Romero said it wasn't supposed to be about race, and it wasn't supposed to have racial like any kind of racial connotation. But you know, at the end, at the end, he's shot. How can you not read it as that, I feel like? I mean, it feels like a very deliberate choice to cast one African-American actor in a movie about white people and then having him be shot at the end instead of survive by the white kind of like redneck militia. There's no way that, and maybe I shouldn't be projecting my own meaning onto Romero like that, but it just seems like such a deliberate choice, especially, again, with the time that this was made and released. It just, again, feels like a very conscious decision to have this black character come in and sort of take control away from the white patriarchal father figure, and then kind of make it to the end only to be taken down by
what's basically like a lynch mob, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the imagery is so visceral in terms of a lynching and the burning of the bodies, and it's so that and like you said, he had denied throughout his life that he thought of race at all, and that he just was the best actor for it. But like I did find an interview with Dwayne Jones before his death in 1987 where he was telling a story about driving in Pittsburgh while filming, and a car was tailing them, and it turns out it was the local boys, and one of them brandished a tire iron, and he said, quote, "The paradox and irony of that I'd been walking around brandishing a tire iron at ghouls all day long, and there was somebody brandishing a tire iron at me from a car, but in absolute seriousness. And at that moment, the total surrealism of the racial nightmare of America being worse than whatever we were doing as a metaphor in that film lives with me to this moment." And even with Romero denying that he, the race aspect of it, he said that his producer, Russ, and him, they were driving the film to New York to show to distributors, and that night on the car radio, they heard about Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And all of a sudden, even in our minds, it became a racial film. So, like, even if it was happenstance, which I have a hard time believing that, and maybe it was when he hired him, but I can't believe that the imagery that he uses in it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a somber note. Somber note to
end on. And with that, bye guys.
Yeah, Gelflings are funny looking, right?
Now, I will say that from one criticism is that I did, in particular this time, kind of was bothered by how incredibly, I guess, masculine the film was. Like, the women characters are reduced to set dressing for the most part. And, like, Barbara falls into the utterly helpless with bits of, fits of hysteria mantra that's like...
Yeah.
I mean, it is the 60s, but, like... it kind of bothered me how, like, strong she was in the beginning. She's running from the zombie. She's, she gets the car, she crashes, and then the moment she finds the menfolk, she just is reduced to useless, hysterical, and catatonia.
That's so interesting, because, like, I hadn't really thought about it like that, because it felt like, I mean, I kind of thought about that a little bit, because it felt like a lot of the adult women were kind of coupled off. There was the young couple, the married couple, and then I guess kind of Ben and Barbara get paired off a little bit together. Like, not really a couple, but in a way they're paired off together. And the women do become, like, subservient characters, but then there's the little girl.
Right.
Who I think it's
and
so
that's
interesting
subversive.
because it's like these women kind of symbolize, like, 1960s femininity and supporting of the masculine characters, but then you have this little girl come back to life and totally rip it apart. Which is so I mean, I just think it's a fascinating kind of way of looking at femininity in that movie. And I mean, not to say that it is a good thing, but it is kind of a fascinating way to have this little zombie child have a lot to, like, seeming, like, who doesn't really play part of the movie until the very end. And she's, like, such an important character in my head. And she's really only on screen for about, like, maybe 5 minutes total.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It almost makes me wonder if it makes me think about, and I have no actual insight into this, but just seeing how, like, I don't know, have any of you seen the Tom Savini remake?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where they gender flip the main character, and she becomes like the driving force is I can't even remember if it's Barbara in it, or if they change the character to be more like Ben, but I almost wonder if that was a response to that. Where it was,
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. So. It's definitely not as good, but I have such a special place in my heart for the remake.
It had some really good effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has a different tone, particularly with the ending. I can't, because doesn't Ben die in that one? Like, not from gunshot? Isn't he like killed in the cellar and then she gets eaten by him? Is that how that? I forget, but I don't remember. I don't think it ends the same way as the original movie.
No, I don't think so either.
It's been a long time.
Yeah,
since I've seen that either,
But then if you also look at the subsequent, like, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, even then it seems like, I wonder if Romero, you know, as much as he would like to pretend that he isn't socially conscious, didn't kind of, you know, course correct. Because I would think, you could argue that the you know, female characters in both of those movies are much more, you know, take charge and less wilty and so yeah, I wonder how much of that played into that, because I have to admit, it's like not something I've ever thought about the original Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot this time when I was actively looking for stuff to think about, and it really, I think what really made me think about it was when Ben like slaps her out of her hysteria fit.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. What are we saying here? But yeah, zombies, man.
Zombies.
Well, anyway, thank you both, Eric and Andreas, for coming on to discuss The Dark Crystal and Night of the Living Dead. Where can our listeners find you, and what have you got coming up?
Well, you can find me at Eric Powerup, basically on all social media, and ericpowerup.net. And I'm trying to raise funds for another feature film with Andreas. we got a couple of options.
Yeah, there's like one or two that we're really pushing for that we really, really want to make right now. That I guess we probably shouldn't say anything about, but I think they're pretty good. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram at SLC_Andreas. I basically complain about Baby Yoda memes, and that's about it. That's about it.
Honestly, that sounds amazing. Guys, we both follow him. You should do it too. It's great.
Absolutely.
So you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you, listeners. What was your experience? What has your experience been with either The Dark Crystal or Night of the Living Dead? Did Gelfling scare the shit out of you too? Let us know. Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at scarredpodcast. And then you can follow me, Mary Beth, on Twitter at MBMcAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
Again, don't forget to tag us and follow us on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thanks, everyone. Stay creepy.
And until next time.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
When you pick up some scratches, cause you want a fun break, the playful way you scratch is the next choice you should make. You can make your dog's leg kick and scratch with that. You could even grab a laser pointer and use your cat. You can build yourself a homemade scratching machine, or use a piece from your chess set. Go ahead, grab the queen. Scratch like a DJ with your record player. A cactus could scratch off that scratchable layer. Cause when it comes to scratching, there's a million playful ways. Thanks to scratchers from the California Lottery, a little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.